The sound of shattering glass downstairs makes my hands freeze over my laptop keyboard. I know exactly what's happening. Another fight between my son and his wife. Their voices rising through the old heating vents of our family home like angry ghosts. I'm Ariel, and I've spent 30 years in this house on Willow Lane. Now I share it with my son Mark and his wife Olivia, who used to be my ex-husband's assistant before she became my daughter-in-law. Funny how life works out sometimes. You never listen. Olivia's voice pierces through the floor. This house is suffocating me. My fingers curl into fists. The nerve of that woman, complaining about my home, the home where I raised Mark alone after Daniel left, where every scratch on the hardwood tells a story of our life together. Keep your voice down, Mark pleads. Mom's working upstairs? Of course, your precious mother. Always your mother first. I should turn up my music, drown them out like I usually do. Instead, I find myself moving to the heating vent, pressing my ear against the metal grate. That's not fair, Mark says. You knew what this house meant to us when you moved in. What it means to her, you mean? God forbid anyone suggests changes around here. We're living in a museum to your childhood, Mark. Another crash. This time I recognize the sound. The blue ceramic vase that sat on our entry table for decades. My throat tightens. Jesus, Olivia, that was Mom's favorite. Oh, please, it was ugly anyway. This whole place needs updating. We could sell it, buy something modern. My blood runs cold. Sell my house over my dead body. We're not selling. Mark's voice hardens. This discussion is over. Like all our discussions lately. You know what? I'm going to Karen's. Don't wait up. The front door slams so hard the family photos rattle on my office wall. I hear Mark's heavy footsteps, followed by the gentle sweep of a broom against broken ceramic. My phone buzzes, a text from Karen, my closest friend. Heads up, Hurricane Olivia heading my way. Again. I type back. Thanks for the warning. Blue vase casualty this time. That bitch, Karen replies. Want me to poison her wine? Despite everything, I smile. Karen's dark humor has been my lifeline these past 2 years, ever since Mark announced his engagement to the woman who helped destroy my marriage. Downstairs, Mark is still sweeping. I should go help him, comfort him. But I remain frozen, remembering another night of broken things. The night Daniel told me he was leaving. He'd been so calm about it, explaining how he and his young assistant had connected on a deeper level. Now, here I am, watching history repeat itself through my son's eyes. My laptop screen has gone dark. The article I was working on, Building Resilient Family Bonds, for the local paper's lifestyle section, seems laughably ironic now. I close the laptop and move to my window seat, the one overlooking our maple-lined street. Olivia's red sports car, Daniel's wedding gift to her, screeches away from the curb. 2 houses down, I see our neighbor Ethan pause his gardening to watch her go. He catches my eye in the window and shakes his head slightly. He's witnessed enough of these scenes to understand. The sound of breaking glass echoes in my memory, mixing with Olivia's words about selling my home, my sanctuary, my legacy to Mark. A familiar anger burns in my chest, but this time it's different, sharper, more focused. I've spent 2 years trying to accept her, to keep the peace for Mark's sake. But now, I pull out my phone again and text Karen. About that wine. Let's talk. Sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to become the very thing you fear. I've learned that lesson before. Time to put it into practice. 3 days after the vase incident, I'm pruning my roses when Daniel's black Mercedes pulls into the driveway. My garden shears snap shut with more force than necessary, severing a healthy stem along with the dead one. Still butchering those poor plants, I see. His voice carries that familiar note of amusement that used to make me smile. Now it just makes my fingers tighten around the shears. "What are you doing here, Daniel?" He holds up a manila envelope. "Bringing the papers Mark asked for. Something about the house insurance." Of course, Mark mentioned needing those. What he didn't mention was asking his father to deliver them. "I'll take them." I reach out, but Daniel doesn't release the envelope immediately. "You look good, Ariel." His eyes drift to the house. Place looks exactly the same. Some of us value stability. The words come out sharper than intended, and I watch his expression shift. "Mom?" Mark appears on the front porch, Olivia close behind him. "Dad, you made it." The pieces click together. This isn't just about insurance papers. "We're having lunch," Mark announces, his voice carrying that forced cheerfulness I've come to dread. "All of us, as a family." Olivia slides her arm through Mark's, beaming. She's wearing the pearl necklace Daniel gave her for the wedding, the one that used to belong to his mother. My mother-in-law had promised it to me once. "Surprise," she chirps. "I thought it would be nice to clear the air after, well, you know." I do know. She wants to play happy families after destroying my vase and threatening to sell my home. The garden shears feel dangerous in my hand. "I've made reservations at Bellamy's," Mark adds quickly. "Your favorite place, Mom." Was my favorite place. Before Daniel took Olivia there while they were sneaking around behind my back. "I have plans with Karen," I lie. "I called Karen," Olivia interjects. "She said you're free." Of course she did. My best friend, outmaneuvered by my son's wife. I'll need to have a word with Karen about loyalty. "Please, Mom." Mark's eyes, so like his father's, plead with me. "Just lunch." The four of us sit at a corner table at Bellamy's 30 minutes later. I order a martini, extra dirty. I'll need it. "So," Daniel clears his throat. "Mark tells me you're still writing for the paper?" "Among other things." I take a long sip. "How's the accounting firm?" "Expanding. We just opened a new branch in—" "Oh, tell them about the promotion." Olivia interrupts, touching Daniel's arm with familiar ease. Daniel's made me head of client relations. The olive in my martini suddenly looks like a perfect projectile. "That's wonderful news," Mark says, but his eyes dart to me. "It is," I agree, my voice honey-sweet. "Though I'm surprised you have time for work, Olivia, with all your plans for renovating my house." The table goes quiet. Olivia's smile tightens. "Our house," she corrects gently, "and I just think some updates would increase its value." "Its value to whom?" The martini glass clinks as I set it down too hard. "The potential buyers you're so eager to find?" "Mom," Mark warns. "No, let's be honest for once." I lean forward. "That's what this lunch is really about, isn't it? Softening me up for the big pitch? What's next? Daniel offering to be the listing agent." Daniel shifts uncomfortably. "Bingo." "Actually," he starts, but Olivia cuts him off. "We're pregnant." The words hit like a physical blow. Mark looks as stunned as I feel. Clearly this wasn't part of the planned script. 8 weeks, Olivia continues, her hand moving to her still flat stomach. "We need more space, Ariel. A nursery, a fresh start. My grandson or granddaughter. In my house, or rather, in whatever modern monstrosity Olivia plans to drive me from." I stand up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Congratulations. Excuse me." In the restaurant's elegant bathroom, I grip the marble counter and stare at my reflection. Behind me, the door opens. "Olivia?" "I was going to tell Mark tonight," she says softly, "but I thought you should know why this matters so much to me. To us." Us. Always us. The way she says it reminds me of Daniel's words years ago. Olivia and I, we're an us now. I turn to face her, and for the first time, I smile genuinely. Because now I know exactly what I need to do. "You're right," I tell her. "Everything needs to change." Starting with you, I add silently. The layoff notice sits on my desk like a loaded gun. After 15 years at the paper, they're restructuring. Karen texts that half the editorial department got the same email. I should feel devastated, but all I can think about is Olivia's smug face at breakfast this morning, touching her still flat stomach while discussing nursery colors. My phone rings. It's Mark. Mom, have you checked your email? Just did. I keep my voice steady. I'll be fine. That's the thing. He hesitates. Olivia got laid off too, from Dad's firm. The coincidence is too perfect. I sit up straighter. Daniel laid her off? Budget cuts, apparently. She's pretty upset. Of course she is. Her perfect plan is unraveling. The timing's terrible with the baby and everything. Mark continues. I was thinking, since you're both home now. I close my eyes. No, Mom, please, just until she finds something new. She can help around the house, keep you company. Keep me company? I laugh, but there's no humor in it. In my own home? Our home, he corrects gently, echoing Olivia's words from the restaurant. Please, Mom, for me? That's how I end up sharing my kitchen with Olivia 3 days later, watching her reorganize my cabinets while humming to herself. She's moved all my spices to different shelves, claiming it's more efficient. The cinnamon's always gone next to the nutmeg, I say, gripping my coffee mug. For 30 years. Change is good. She reaches for another shelf. Oh, what's this? She's found the old recipe box, the one with Daniel's mother's handwriting. Before I can stop her, she's opening it. These are gorgeous. We should digitize them, create a family cookbook. Put it back. She blinks at my tone. I just thought, that's the problem. You're always just thinking about how to improve things that aren't yours to improve. The recipe box trembles slightly in her hands. I'm trying to help, Ariel, to be part of this family. By taking my job, my house, my son. Your job? Her eyes narrow. What are you implying? Quite a coincidence, don't you think? Both of us losing our jobs the same week you announce your pregnancy? She sets the recipe box down carefully. You think Daniel fired me because of you? I think nothing happens by accident where you're concerned. The kitchen door swings open. Mark stands there, looking between us. Everything okay? Perfect, Olivia says, her voice wobbling. Your mother was just explaining how I orchestrated my own layoff to, what exactly? Force my way into living here? That's not what No, please. She presses a hand to her stomach. Tell Mark how I'm manipulating everyone, how I stole his father, and now I'm stealing his childhood home. Olivia, Mark starts, but she's already pushing past him. I need air, she announces, heading for the front door. Mark turns to me, his expression a perfect mirror of his father's disappointment. Really, Mom? She's playing you, I snap, just like she played your father. She's carrying my child, and that makes her immune to criticism? The front door slams. Through the kitchen window, I watch Olivia hurry across the lawn. She stops at the sidewalk, one hand still on her stomach, the other wiping her eyes. Ethan, my neighbor, is getting his mail. He says something to Olivia, who shakes her head. Then he looks toward my window, catching my eye. His expression is unreadable. I know this is hard, Mark says quietly, but she's trying. And that's my baby she's carrying, your grandchild. Can't you at least try, too? He leaves me alone in the kitchen. The recipe box sits where Olivia left it, slightly askew. I open it, finding the card for Daniel's mother's apple pie, the one Olivia always claimed was her specialty at family gatherings. My phone buzzes. A text from Karen. Heard about the layoff. Wine tonight? I look out the window again. Olivia's gone, but Ethan's still there, pretending to check his mail while watching my house. He's worked in human resources for 20 years, Maybe he'd know if layoffs at 2 different companies could really be coincidental. I text Karen back, "Rain check, have some research to do." Then I take a photo of the recipe card and send it to Mark with a simple message. "Ask your wife to make this for dinner. Grandmother's special recipe. See what she says." Sometimes the truth hides in the smallest details, and I'm done being the only one who sees them. The real estate brochure falls from between Olivia's pregnancy journal, scattering glossy photos of modern homes across my bedroom floor. I shouldn't have been snooping, but something about her whispered phone calls in the garden drew me to search her things while she was at her prenatal appointment. My hands shake as I gather the papers. 3 properties, all newly built, all with perfect for growing families, splashed across their descriptions. On the back of one, Olivia's handwriting, "Possible comps for Willow Lane listing?" The front door slams downstairs. "Ariel, you home?" I stuff the brochures under my sweater just as Olivia appears in my doorway, glowing with that particular radiance that makes Mark look at her like she's made of gold. "What are you doing in my room?" Her voice stays sweet, but her eyes narrow. "My room," I correct her. "My house, remember?" She rests one hand on her slightly swelling belly. "The doctor says stress isn't good for the baby." Neither is lying to my son. "I don't know what you mean." She moves closer, and I catch a whiff of Daniel's favorite perfume on her. "But since you're here, I wanted to discuss some ideas for the nursery. This room has the best light." "My room." "The baby needs space, Ariel. We all do. Surely you can understand that." The brochures crinkle against my ribs as I step around her. "I understand perfectly." I find Mark in his home office, focused on his laptop. He doesn't look up when I enter, probably expecting Olivia with another paint sample or nursery design. "Your wife's been house hunting." That gets his attention. "What?" I pull out the brochures, letting them fall onto his keyboard. "She's already pricing out our home's value." "Mom, these could be for..." "Read the notes on the back." He does. His face doesn't change, but his shoulders tense. "I'll talk to her." "Like you talked to her about the recipe? Did she ever make that pie?" "She wasn't feeling well." She never feels well when proof might expose her lies. Mark pushes back from his desk. "Stop, just stop. You're seeing conspiracies everywhere." "Because they're everywhere. First our jobs, now this." "Actually," he cuts in, "about that, Dad called. He's offering Olivia her position back, with a promotion." The room tilts slightly. "Of course he is." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Ask yourself why Daniel would fire her, then rehire her weeks later with better pay. Unless it was all orchestrated to force her to move in here. Or maybe," Mark's voice hardens, "he recognizes her talent and wants to support his family, his grandchild." My phone buzzes, a text from Ethan. "Found something interesting about those layoffs. Coffee?" "You're not listening to me," I tell Mark, but he's already turning back to his work. "No, Mom, you're not listening to anyone but yourself." I leave him there, crossing the lawn to Ethan's house. He's waiting on his porch with 2 steaming mugs and a manila folder. "Your ex-husband's firm never had layoffs," he says without preamble. I checked with industry contacts. Olivia was the only one let go. My hands curl around the hot mug. And the newspaper? That was real. But the timing? He slides a document from the folder. "Daniel bought shares in the parent company 3 months ago, enough to influence board decisions." The coffee burns my throat. He orchestrated both layoffs. Looks that way? Question is, why? From across the street, I see Olivia watching us through my living room window. She lifts her hand in a small wave, almost taunting. "Because she needed a reason to move in," I say, "to take over, and Daniel's helping her do it." Ethan studies me carefully. "What are you going to do?" I think of the brochures, the recipe test, the careful manipulation of my son. "I'm going to prove it, all of it." Be careful, he warns. Pregnant women make sympathetic victims. And what about mothers protecting their children? What do we make? His answer is lost in the sound of a car door. Daniel's Mercedes pulls into my driveway, and Olivia hurries out to meet him. They speak briefly, heads close together, before she glances our way again. I stand, leaving my coffee untouched. Thank you for this. Ariel. Ethan's voice stops me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do to others. It's what you prevent them from doing to you. I nod, watching Daniel and Olivia disappear into my house, into my son's life, into my carefully built world. Prevention might be too late, but revelation? That's just beginning. Ethan's laptop screen glows in his darkened kitchen as he shows me the email thread he recovered. My hands grip the counter so hard my knuckles whiten. 3 months before your layoff, he points out, Daniel and Olivia planning everything. The emails detail their scheme, orchestrated job losses, the calculated pregnancy announcement, even the real estate agent they'd contacted about Willow Lane's potential market value. There's more, Ethan says quietly, about Mark's job. My head snaps up. What about it? Daniel's been blocking his promotion opportunities, keeping him dependent, tied to the house. A car door slams outside. Through Ethan's window, I watch Olivia waddle up my driveway, shopping bags in hand. 4 months pregnant now, and she's wearing it like a crown. I need copies, I tell him. Ariel. He closes the laptop. What are you planning? The shopping bags rustle as Olivia struggles with her keys. Without thinking, I move to help her, but stop myself. Let her struggle. Nothing yet. I turn back to Ethan, but I need ammunition. Be careful. Revenge has a way of... This isn't revenge. The words come out sharp. This is protection. His silence speaks volumes. Back home, I find Olivia in my kitchen, unpacking what looks like an entire Williams-Sonoma store. My mother's old copper pots are stacked in a corner, replaced by gleaming stainless steel. Oh good, you're here, she chirps. Help me organize these? The nesting instinct is going crazy today. I pick up one of my displaced pots. Where are these going? Goodwill, probably. They're so outdated. They're family heirlooms. She sighs, one hand on her belly. Ariel, we've talked about this. The baby needs a clean, modern environment. All these old things harbor dust, bacteria. The only thing harboring toxins in this house is... The front door opens. Mark's voice calls out, Mom, Liv, big news. Olivia's face lights up with practiced radiance. I set the pot down harder than necessary. Mark bursts in, waving papers. They're offering me a position in Seattle. Better pay, full benefits. Seattle? My voice sounds distant. It's perfect timing. Olivia gushes. The housing market there is amazing. We could get twice the space for what this place would sell for. The room spins slightly. I grip the counter. Mom? Mark's excitement falters. Say something. Your father knows about this offer? He recommended me for it. Mark beams. Said it's time I spread my wings. Of course he did. Get Mark out of the way. Let Olivia handle the sale. Daniel's fingerprints are all over this. We can't leave you alone in this big house. Olivia adds sweetly. It's not safe. You should sell. Get something manageable. Near us, maybe? My phone buzzes. Another text from Ethan. Found the real estate listing. They've already taken photos. Mom? Mark touches my arm. You okay? I look at my son, Daniel's eyes, my stubborn chin, and see the boy who once promised never to leave me like his father did. Then I look at Olivia, wearing Daniel's mother's pearls while plotting to erase every trace of our family's history. I need air, I manage, pushing past them. In the garden, my roses are gone, replaced by Olivia's drought-resistant landscaping. The maple tree where Mark carved his initials, scheduled for removal next week. Every change small enough to seem reasonable, but together forming a complete erasure. My phone buzzes again. Karen this time. Girl, you need to see this. Olivia's Pinterest board. My future home, Seattle edition. Your furniture's not in any of the photos. I sink onto the patio steps, surrounded by unfamiliar plants in a garden I no longer recognize. Through the kitchen window, I watch Mark hold Olivia from behind, his hands on her growing belly, while she continues unpacking her new kitchen equipment. The copper pots catch the afternoon light. 5 generations of family dinners, holidays, celebrations, reduced to goodwill donations. I pull up Ethan's email screenshots, then open my contacts. Daniel's number stares back at me. One call could expose everything: the manipulation, the scheming, the calculated destruction of my world. But would Mark believe it? Or would I become the bitter ex-wife, the difficult mother-in-law trying to sabotage his happiness? My finger hovers over Daniel's number. In the kitchen, Olivia laughs at something Mark says, her hand protectively cradling her stomach. My grandchild, the ultimate shield. I press call. Sometimes protection requires destruction, and I've learned from the best. The baby shower invitations mock me from my kitchen table, pink and gold foil, announcing a welcome baby girl celebration in my home this weekend. My home, which Olivia has transformed into something unrecognizable, all without asking. I pick up one invitation. The party date is circled in red, the same day as my wedding anniversary. Daniel would remember that. Olivia, too. My phone buzzes with Daniel's response to last night's call. Let's discuss this in person, coming by this afternoon. The doorbell rings just as I'm pouring my second bourbon. Olivia's voice floats up from downstairs, greeting guests for what she calls a pre-shower planning committee. I don't move from my study. Let them plan their party. Let them celebrate the next generation of manipulation. Mom? Mark knocks softly. Everyone's asking for you. I'm working. He opens the door anyway, frowning at the bourbon. It's 2 p.m. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I sound like my mother. God help me. Dad's downstairs. Of course he is. The gang's all here. Downstairs, the living room has been transformed into a pink wonderland. My antique furniture is pushed against walls, replaced by rented chairs. Family photos are gone, switched out for tasteful abstracts. Olivia holds court from my favorite armchair, her hand resting on her prominent belly. Ariel, finally joining us? The room falls quiet. Karen's here, not meeting my eyes. Ethan's sister, Emma, who's apparently now Olivia's best friend. Even my old book club members, gathered around Olivia like moths to a flame. Daniel stands by the fireplace, examining the new artwork. He turns, and for a moment, I see recognition flash across his face. He remembers what used to hang there, our wedding portrait. Ladies, Olivia announces, would you excuse us? Family meeting. The guests file out, leaving whispers in their wake. Karen squeezes my hand as she passes, slipping something into my palm, a flash drive. I thought we should discuss the Seattle move, Olivia says once we're alone. As a family, there's nothing to discuss. I grip the flash drive. This is my home. Our home, Mark corrects automatically. Actually, Daniel steps forward. That's what I came to discuss. The deed is in my name. Was in your name, he says quietly. Check the records. It was transferred to Mark last month. The room tilts. That's impossible. I never signed. You did. Olivia's voice is gentle. Remember that insurance paperwork? For the renovation permits? My legs give out. I sink onto the couch, remembering the stack of documents Mark brought home. I'd trusted him, signed without reading. It's for the best, Daniel says. You're not getting younger, Ariel. Seattle has excellent retirement communities. Get out. My voice shakes. Mom, all of you, get out of my house. It's not your house anymore. Olivia's mask slips just for a moment. And this isn't your family anymore either. The sooner you accept that. Accept what? That you've stolen everything again? Ariel, Daniel warns. I pull out my phone, opening the emails Ethan found. Should we discuss what everyone's been accepting? The orchestrated layoffs? The blocked promotions? The real estate listings from months ago? Mark stiffens. What's she talking about? She's confused, Olivia says quickly. Emotional. You know how she gets. Show him, I tell Daniel. Show him the truth or I will. Daniel's face hardens. You really want to do this? Now? With your grandchild at stake? The threat hangs there. My grandchild. My last connection to this family they're dismantling piece by piece. Mom? Mark sounds young suddenly, uncertain. What's going on? I look at my son, really look at him. See the boy who needed protection, who's become a man being manipulated by the people who should love him most. My finger hovers over the email forward button. One click and everything explodes. The truth about Daniel and Olivia's scheme. The carefully orchestrated destruction of my life. The betrayal that goes deeper than anyone suspects. But Mark's hand rests on Olivia's belly. His child, my grandchild, the next generation of this poisoned family tree. I delete the email draft. Nothing, I whisper. Nothing at all. Olivia's triumph glitters in her eyes as she turns to the others. Now, about the shower seating arrangements. I slip the flash drive into my pocket and head for the stairs. Behind me, they continue planning the celebration of new life in my stolen home, while I climb toward my shrinking sanctuary, tasting ashes and bourbon and defeat. The flash drive Karen gave me contains more than emails. There are photos, dozens of them. Olivia with Daniel dated long before their supposed affair began. Bank statements showing joint accounts opened years ago. And most damning, documentation of their plan to manipulate Mark's career, my layoff, everything. I'm studying these at Ethan's kitchen table when Olivia appears in his doorway. Breaking and entering now? I ask without looking up. Door was open. She waddles in, heavily pregnant. We need to talk. About how long you and Daniel were really together? Or about how you orchestrated my son's entire life? Her hand moves protectively to her belly. You don't understand? I understand perfectly. I turn the laptop so she can see the photos. You've been playing us for years. She doesn't deny it. Instead, she sinks into a chair, suddenly looking very young. Daniel promised he'd handle you. Handle me? I laugh. Like he handled Mark's career, blocking promotions, arranging that Seattle job? To protect him, her voice hardens, from becoming like you, trapped in this town, in that museum of a house, living in the past. You mean protecting your investment? How much is my home worth to you, Olivia? Was it worth destroying my family? Your family? She leans forward. You lost your family the moment you chose that house over Daniel, over Mark. Everything I did was to free them from your obsession. The baby kicks visibly against her dress, my granddaughter, the next piece in their game. Does Mark know? I ask quietly. About you and Daniel? About any of it? Fear flickers across her face. You wouldn't. Try me. She stands abruptly. If you tell him, you'll lose him forever. Think carefully, Ariel. Who will he believe? His bitter mother or his wife and unborn child? The truth has evidence. The truth? She laughs. The truth is you're alone. No job, no husband, and soon no house. Even Karen's chosen my side. Face it, Ariel. You've lost. My phone buzzes. A text from Mark. Where are you? Dad's here with the real estate agent. That's my cue. Olivia moves toward the door. Coming? I follow her across our adjoining lawns. Through my living room window, I see Daniel with a woman in a business suit. Mark hovers nearby, looking uncertain. Last chance, Olivia murmurs. Accept the retirement community. Stay quiet. You can still be part of your granddaughter's life. I stop at my front steps. You know what your mistake was, Olivia? Enlighten me. Thinking I needed to be handled, I push past her into my house, where Daniel is mid-sentence with the agent. Just needs some modernizing, but the bones are, get out. My voice carries years of stored rage. Mom, please, Mark starts. Show him, I tell Daniel. Show our son what you've been hiding, or I will. Daniel's face darkens. Ariel, think about what you're doing. I have. I turn to Mark. Your father and Olivia have been together for years. Before the affair, before the divorce, they've been manipulating your life, your career, everything. She's lying, Olivia says quickly. The pregnancy hormones. I pull out my phone, opening the files. Bank statements, photos, emails, everything. Mark takes the phone slowly. I watch his face as he scrolls. Confusion, disbelief, devastation. Mark, honey. Olivia reaches for him. He jerks away. How long? Son. Daniel steps forward. How long? The silence stretches. Finally, Olivia whispers, 5 years. Mark's hand shakes. Before college graduation? Before you helped me get my job? We wanted to help you, Daniel says, guide you toward a better life. By lying, manipulating? Mark's voice breaks. My whole life is a setup? The baby. Olivia touches her stomach. Is she even mine? The room freezes. Olivia's face goes white. And there it is, the question nobody wanted to ask. The final piece of their carefully constructed facade. Mark looks at his father, at his wife, at the life they built on lies. Then he hands me back my phone and walks out the front door. Mark, Olivia moves to follow. Let him go, I say quietly. For once in his life, let him choose his own path. The real estate agent slips out awkwardly. Daniel stares at the space where our son stood. Olivia sinks onto my couch, tears streaming. Sometimes revenge isn't about winning. It's about revealing the truth and letting the pieces fall where they may. I head upstairs to pack, leaving them with the wreckage of their perfect plan. Behind me, Olivia's sobs echo through my not quite lost home. The DNA test results sit unopened on my kitchen table while I make tea in my mother's old copper pot. Outside, the maple tree Mark tried to save still stands, its leaves turning gold in the October light. The front door opens. Mark's footsteps, then a pause at the kitchen threshold. You kept the pots, he says. Some things are worth keeping. I pour 2 cups. How's the new job? Different. He sits across from me, eyes on the envelope. Is that? I slide it toward him. Your choice. His hands shake slightly as he breaks the seal. I watch his face as he reads, remembering the day he first rode his bike under that maple tree, the day he graduated, the day he brought Olivia home. All those moments that seemed pure once, now tainted by manipulation. Well, he says finally, guess I'm not moving to Seattle after all. The test results flutter to the floor. Neither of us moves to pick them up. Have you heard from them? I ask. Dad's in Europe. Olivia's with her sister in Phoenix. He traces the rim of his teacup. The baby's due next month. Not his baby. Not my grandchild. Another lie in a house full of ghosts. I signed the house back over to you, he says. The lawyer has the paperwork. Mark, I never wanted it. That was their plan, not mine. He meets my eyes. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Through the window, I spot Ethan in his garden, pretending not to watch us. Karen's car drives by slowly, then continues down Willow Lane. the neighborhood holding its breath, waiting to see how our drama ends. I found something else, Mark continues. In Dad's office after everything, letters from Mom, your mother, to him before he left, warning him about Olivia. My hand's still on the teapot. What? She knew. Somehow she saw what Olivia was before any of us. Dad kept the letters, but he chose not to believe them. He pulls out an envelope, aged and creased. She wrote this one to me, asked him to give it to me when I was old enough to understand. He never did. No, Mark unfolds the letter carefully. She wrote that sometimes the people who seem to want to free us are really just building different cages. That true freedom comes from choosing our own paths, even if they lead us back to where we started. My mother's words, reaching across time to protect what she couldn't save in life. I think of all the times I fought to keep this house, thinking I was protecting our legacy, when really I was protecting the truth she tried to tell. I'm going to travel for a while, Mark says, figure out who I am without their influence. The house will be here, I tell him, when you're ready. He stands, touching the copper pot gently. Keep these out. They look right here. After he leaves, I walk through my house again, noting the spaces where Olivia's modern touches have been stripped away, leaving behind the bones of what was always meant to be. In the living room, I rehang the family photos, including one of Mark as a baby, held by my mother. The doorbell rings. Ethan stands there with a garden trowel and a small rose bush. Thought you might want to restart your garden, he says. The old roses, the ones your mother planted. I take the plant, feeling its weight, its potential. Why did you help me? Really? He looks past me to the maple tree. Because 20 years ago, Daniel and Olivia did the same thing to my family. Different house, different story, same scheme. I wasn't strong enough to stop them then. And now? Now they'll think twice before trying again. He hands me the trowel. Sometimes the best revenge is making sure there are no more victims. I plant the rose under my mother's maple tree, where it will either grow or die on its own terms. Inside, the copper pots gleam in the afternoon light, ready for new memories, untainted by manipulation. The DNA results lie forgotten on the kitchen floor. Some truths matter more than biology. Some homes are built on foundations stronger than blood. I pick up my phone and delete the last photos of Olivia from my gallery. Let Phoenix keep her. My house remembers who it belongs to, and so do I.
I'll make sure I'm happy enough for both of us. Susan stole her sister's husband, John. She sent an invitation to their wedding to gloat, but your mother and I will go together. We'll show them hell. Usually gentle and rarely angry. It seems the parents have reached their limit with Susan's wrongdoings. Attending the wedding with a frightening smile, it turned from a celebration to a scene of hell. I am Lily Anderson, 24 years old. I work as an illustrator. I've been married for just under a year. And my relationship with my husband, John, is good. John and I met through a friend's introduction. It didn't take long before we started dating, and he proposed at a restaurant with a night view. The wedding was full of blessings from family and friends, and smiles never ceased. One day, as I was about to send John off to work as usual, I noticed he had left his smartphone in the living room and brought it to him. John. You forgot your phone. Oh, thanks. That helps. I'll be going then. John hurried out, but I felt a slight unease about his rush. This would become the first sign. Afterwards, John started carrying his smartphone with him at all times, even at home. Despite his suspicious behavior, I couldn't believe he would cheat, so I chose to trust him. We had never had major issues before and got along well. So I convinced myself that everything would be okay. However, this belief would soon be shattered. One day, after I finished hanging the laundry, I went back to the living room and noticed a notification on my own phone. It was an email from an unknown account. "Hey, it's been a long time, hasn't it? How are you?" It seemed like a message from someone I knew. But I had heard of scams where someone pretends to be an acquaintance. So, I decided to ignore it. If it were important, they would call. "Hey, don't ignore me. I see you've read my message. Ignoring your sister is really mean." The moment I closed my phone, it rang again, and checking it, I was surprised to see the word sister from the same unknown account. Indeed, I do have a sister named Susan, who has always been troublesome. For instance, financial issues. Susan would borrow money from friends for various reasons, and then cut off contact without repaying, often directing the trouble towards me and our parents. However, because she is their daughter, my parents often ended up repaying her debts. Next, the complaint issues. If something even slightly displeased Susan, she would immediately file a complaint. Her manner of doing so was appalling, including hurling insults and forcing those who came to apologize to kneel, making her an extremely unpleasant complainer. And then, issues with men. Susan liked men, particularly those who were taken. Whether friends or relatives, she tried to seduce any man she targeted. Indeed, because of her, I've had disputes with friends. And the fallout often affected my parents and me. That's why I wanted nothing to do with Susan, and we had been out of touch since she left home. However, the message on my phone contained the word sister. If this was really her, I had a bad feeling and hesitated to reply. But I decided to leave it alone for the time being. Whether it was Susan or someone impersonating a sister, I didn't want to get involved either way. However, as my phone kept ringing annoyingly, I decided to open it to block the number. Then, I received a shocking message. "If you want to ignore me, that's fine. But just so you know, John is mine now, so let's get the divorce over with quickly, okay? Thanks for finding such a great catch for me. John won't be coming back to you from today, so I'll send the divorce papers. Please sign them soon." Simultaneously, a photo of John and Susan together was sent. I knew it was true without needing to confirm. My hands trembled, and I sank to the floor. I was so pale I could feel the blood drain from my face, and a great shock overwhelmed me. As Susan had said, John never came home again, only the completed divorce papers arrived. I tried to contact John, but he completely ignored me. Suddenly robbed of my happiness, a flood of sadness and anger hit me. And I became emotionally unstable. Why? John. I spent days crying. After a few days, I calmed down a bit and decided to contact Susan. "What are you thinking? Let me talk to John. You've been ignoring me all this time, no greetings, no apologies. What are you thinking? What? You should be the one apologizing. Just send John back here for now." "No way. He doesn't want to come back. He loves me way more than he loves you. Why should I apologize? It's your fault for not keeping him." No matter what I said, it didn't get through. Given my mental state was at its worst, I grew tired of thinking and worrying. Enough. Finally realized it's hopeless. Clinging to hope only makes you more unlikable. If you're going to resent someone, resent your own lack of charm. Loser. After this exchange, I closed my phone. I was disgusted with dealing with Susan, and I had lost all affection for John, who had chosen her. Before I knew it, I had signed the divorce papers. Thus, What should have been a happy marriage came to an end. Following that, my life became miserable. Perhaps due to the severe mental damage, food didn't taste right. And I felt more tired than usual. I looked so haggard that even my colleagues at work were worried about me. I reassured them with a smile, but it seemed I was at my limit both physically and mentally. And I eventually collapsed at work. When I woke up, I was in the hospital with my parents and a close colleague by my side. Lily. Can you recognize me? Lily. Hearing their voices, I came to my senses. Looking around, it seemed I was in a hospital, trying to recall the last thing I remembered. I must have collapsed. My father sighed with relief. I was shocked when the hospital called. Aren't you working too much? I knew that wasn't it. It must have been the stress from the situation with John and Susan that had worn me out.
Yeah.
Maybe. As I said that, my mother quickly pressed the nurse call button to call for a doctor. After being examined, I was advised to stay in the hospital for observation. Are you eating properly? Are you resting enough? Bombarded with questions by my concerned father, I assured him I was fine. Then my mother asked him to go buy some drinks and something easy to eat for everyone. He agreed and left the hospital room. Lily, something must have happened, right? I thought so too. Can you think of anything? You've looked run down lately. And this has never happened before. It seems women do have sharp intuition, and it seems to be true. I sighed and explained to them why. While explaining, I realized I was crying. And without knowing it, I had reached my breaking point. I thought I had settled it in my mind. But it turns out I really don't understand myself. When I forced a laugh, my mother squeezed my hand tightly. I had no idea such things were happening. Why didn't you tell us sooner? It's the first I've heard that you got divorced. I'm sorry to say this in front of you, Mom, but is your sister sane? I can't believe this. Both clearly showed their anger towards my sister. And I could tell they were genuinely worried about me. I didn't want to worry anyone, or make a big deal out of it. I thought I could handle it by myself. I didn't want to cause trouble or worry for anyone. I even thought there was some truth in what Susan had said, making me feel pathetic. And maybe it's my lack of charm that caused this. That's nonsense. What are you talking about? No one would agree that your sister and your ex-husband are okay. Naomi is right. You did nothing wrong. I'm sorry that you had to suffer through this alone. Both looked like they were about to cry. I regretted not relying more on those around me. My mother, considering my mental and physical state, suggested I should come back home for a while. The doctor also said I needed rest. And Naomi would handle the necessary paperwork at the company for me. When I told my father about resting at home, he immediately told me to come back. Afterwards, Naomi managed to explain the situation at work well. And I got a call from HR saying, "You have accumulated leave, so take your time to rest." When I thanked Naomi, she told me that she was there to help and that I could rely on her anytime. After a few days at home, I could feel myself physically and mentally recovering. Holding things in really isn't good, I realized. And today, Naomi came to visit again, and while we were enjoying cake prepared by my mother, my phone rang. Curious, I opened it, and my heart raced. Yoo-hoo. How are you doing? I thought you might be curious about what's going on with us, so I decided to give you a call. It was Susan, from whom I hadn't heard since that tumultuous day. I regretted carelessly opening my phone. Naomi noticed the change in my expression. What's wrong? Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. I responded, but it was clear something was off. Naomi asked if she could see the phone. I hesitated, not wanting to cause more worry. But remembering that bottling things up wasn't good, I nodded and handed my phone to Naomi. Naomi's expression turned puzzled as she looked at the phone. What is this? Is she picking a fight? It's your sister, right? I nodded, and Naomi closed the phone. Just ignore it, ignore it. Actually, let's block her. You don't need to deal with people like this. Convinced by her words, I was about to block her when another message from Susan arrived. We've been living together smoothly since then. And guess what? I'm pregnant. You might think already, but nope, John and I have been together for 6 months now. The word pregnant stopped time for me. We had been trying to conceive during our marriage. We hope we'll be blessed with our baby soon, was something we strived for together. So this message tore through my heart. Tears came unbidden, and seeing this, Naomi was shocked and took the phone from my hands. What? Unbelievable. I'm so irritated I could explode. We should sue them. Sue them. That was something I had considered when I first received the message. But now, I had no energy left and had given up. I just don't want to deal with this anymore. When I muttered this, Naomi calmed down. Sorry. I got carried away. You're right. You don't want to deal with this. That's for the best. Naomi rubbed my back, and her touch was so comforting that I cried for a while. Then, as I was in this state, my mother came into the living room. Hey, Lily. Actually, I haven't told your father about this yet. I understood what her words meant. If he knew, my father would be furious. But I think it's time we told him. My mother's solemn words hit me hard. I thought for a moment. I think it's better to tell him too. This is just too much. With Naomi's agreement, I decided to let my mother speak to him. Naomi went home, and in the evening, my father returned from work. Oh. It smells good here. What's for dinner tonight? Welcome home, Dad. I'm home. According to my mother, my father had been in a better mood since I came back home. He was usually not grumpy, but he seemed happy every day, glad that I had returned. I was genuinely happy and thankful to have a safe place to return to. But today, my mother had a serious look as she started a conversation with my father. Welcome home, Dad. I'd like to have a fun chat as usual. But there's something important we need to talk about. Seeing my mother's expression, my father also turned serious and looked at me. Is this about you? Let's hear it. Just seeing his kind face made me want to cry. After explaining everything to him, his expression remained calm. But I could feel an undercurrent of anger. I see. Lily, don't block her yet. Huh? You don't need to read the messages, but don't block her just yet. Told so by my father, I nodded. He must have a plan. My mother always accepted my father's decisions at times like these. For now, Lily, don't block Susan, and don't look at any messages. It might be good to let Naomi know to consult with her too. Understood. Thanks for telling us. Lily, you're okay. Your mom and I are here for you. And so is Naomi. Touched by my parents' kind words and smiles, I felt relieved and burst into tears. Seeing me, my father and mother laughed. My heart felt incredibly warm. That night, I shared with Naomi, it's good to have such supportive parents. And I have you too. Looking up at the night sky, I truly felt it. Following our discussion, I decided to move. Moving meant returning to my parents' house. Since my workplace was within commuting distance from my parents' house. Naomi suggested that it would be better for my mental health to live at my parents' house rather than staying alone with unhappy memories. Since the lease was in my name, I processed the cancellation and sent John's belongings to his parents' house. On the day of the move, I also handled the mail forwarding at the post office and successfully completed the move. I said goodbye to the landlord with a smile, thankful for his help. Thus, I started living at my parents' house and successfully returned to work. My colleagues were very worried about me, but I could finally smile and reassure them properly. My boss told me not to overdo it, making me realize once again what a great workplace it was. A few months later, I'm home. When I returned home, my mother greeted me with a serious face. "Welcome back, Lily. There's something we need to talk about. Come to the living room as soon as you've changed."
Ah,
Okay. Understood. Predicting something was up from my mother's serious expression, I changed into home clothes and went to the living room where my parents sat with a letter. Looking puzzled, I tentatively sat down in front of them and looked at the letter placed before me. "An invitation?" I muttered softly, and my father confirmed, yes. It seemed to be an invitation to a wedding. But was there some problem with it? "Can I look at it?" "Yes, you can." I took the invitation in my hands. The sender was, shockingly, Susan and John. What? My voice involuntarily rose. "Since you moved, you had a forwarding address, right?" "This was delivered to your home." "That's right." No wonder both their faces were so grave. Yet, strangely, I was calm. Previously, I would have been shocked, but now, I only felt incredulity. "Are you okay?" Mother was worried. Father was also looking at me. Somehow, I'm much more okay than I thought I would be. Looking at this, I'm just dismayed. I mean, how much more do they want to degrade me? Right. She is my daughter, but this is beyond what I can tolerate. I'm glad Lily isn't as shocked as we feared. But this is definitely going too far. Behind my parents, I could almost see flames. I was thankful that my parents were angry for my sake. It's addressed to me. I don't have to go, right? When I asked this, my parents looked me straight in the eyes. "Your mother and I will go." "What?" "We'll show them hell." Eh. It was the first time I'd seen my usually gentle parents this angry, and it unsettled me. But this is addressed to me. "Oh, dear, as parents of the bride, we can't just not show up, can we?" "Exactly. It's our daughter's wedding, we're looking forward to it, right, Mother?" "Yes, indeed." My parents exchanged smiles. All I could manage was a wry smile. When I talked about this with Naomi, she wasn't surprised at all. "Aren't your parents right? If you're family of the bride or groom, you really should attend." "But, oh, a wedding, huh?" Even over the phone, I could tell she was smirking. It seemed I was surrounded by strong-willed people who could also be quite intimidating when angered. "On the day of the wedding. Are we really going?" "Are you sure?" Watching my parents prepare to attend the wedding, I asked them anxiously. "What? What are you worried about?" "There's nothing to worry about." The smile on my mother's face was not reaching her eyes, which made me anxious. Father showed a similar response, preparing steadily despite my concerns. I wonder if this is okay. Ignoring my worries, I heard the sound of a car arriving. I went to the front door to check, thinking they had called a taxi. But the car parked outside was familiar. And out of the car stepped Naomi. "Naomi? What are you doing?" I exclaimed as I opened the door, and there was Naomi. dressed in a party dress, looking glamorous. Morning. Are your dad and mom ready? No, answer my question first. Eh? I'm attending the wedding too, you know? Huh? I was shocked by her statement, and just then, my parents came out of the house. I asked them what was going on, and it turned out that Naomi had a friend who was a relative of John. After explaining the situation, she was allowed to attend as his relative's girlfriend. Hearing this, my parents didn't try to stop her, instead, they were excited to go together. While I was wondering what they were thinking, Naomi said, I can't just stand by and let this happen to Lily. You understand, right? Although I was anxious, I agreed. Then, my parents and Naomi left for the venue together in the same car. I felt like I should have gone too, but Naomi sensed this and said, if you want to see, I can show you via video call. Reluctantly, I stayed home alone. However, curious. I contacted Naomi to connect me via a video call. When they arrived at the venue, my parents and Naomi headed to the registration. Naomi's name was listed thanks to John's relative's arrangement. But my parents weren't on the guest list. The receptionist looked flustered and went to check, only for Susan to arrive at the scene. She was shocked and visibly disturbed to see my parents. How come you're here? Why? We're her parents, it's only natural for us to be here. It seems there was a mix-up since we didn't receive an invitation. Susan gave a forced smile. I invited Lily, actually. Oh, when Lily told us she was surprised too. We had no idea she was getting married. And since Lily had work today, we came in her place. It's fine to send an invitation to Lily, but you should have sent one for us too. It wouldn't look good for the bride's parents to be absent, would it? My father mentioned the lack of invitation twice. From Naomi's video call, I couldn't see my parents' expressions, but I could imagine. Oh, yes, of course. I'm just so happy my parents could be here. Susan, misunderstanding, genuinely believed her parents had come for her. How delusional. Then the groom, John, appeared and went pale on seeing my parents. Relax, John. They came to celebrate with us. They really do love me. It's because of how Lily is. Hearing this, John seemed relieved and smiled as he greeted my parents. Then John's parents joined them, and the atmosphere turned lively. Seeing John's parents, who had been kind to me as their daughter-in-law, enjoying themselves was a bit painful. Was our relationship good only because I was John's wife? I felt a bit shocked. Maybe it was right not to go after all. I muttered to myself. Then the scene moved to the ceremony. And then to the reception where Susan and John entered looking happy. From time to time, Naomi asked, "Are you okay?" I was surprisingly calm watching it and kept saying, "I'm okay." I was more concerned about my phone's battery. But Naomi reassured me she had a portable charger if needed. As the moment for the parents' thank you letters approached, Susan started to panic because she hadn't prepared for her parents' presence. Seeing this, my parents asked the host for a microphone. Today, we weren't supposed to be here. So it's understandable that Susan isn't prepared. Therefore, we'd like to give a surprise message to our daughter, Susan. The venue applauded at my father's words. Susan, thinking she was being helped, grinned and applauded. "Dad, I'm so happy." Her insincere gratitude was grating. I continued watching in discomfort. Then my father began something unbelievable with a smile. "Our surprise is this." As he spoke, the doors to the banquet hall suddenly opened. And several men stood there, all looking outraged. I watched, puzzled. However, Susan turned pale seeing them. Our Susan is so charming that many men have taken a liking to her. The kind Susan has apparently responded to all their feelings. Truly, she is our pride and joy. And these gentlemen wanted to give us surprise today. So we brought them here. Wait. Dad. How did you? Susan. I had no idea you were so considerate. Now, graciously accept your surprise. Following my father's lead, the men stormed the stage, openly expressing their anger. Susan tried to escape, but one grabbed her arm. There were other men besides me? What is this marriage supposed to mean? How much do you think I've given you? Give back the money I lent you. Shouts filled the air. Susan turned pale and was nearly in tears. Naomi commented calmly, "Wow," but I was shocked and speechless. John was also confronting Susan, "What is this supposed to mean?" But Susan was too flustered to respond. Then my mother took the microphone and started speaking. Actually, there's another surprise. As my husband mentioned earlier, our daughter Susan is very attractive. So much so that she is also popular among women. As my mother spoke, several women stood up. These ladies also wanted to meet Susan. Following my mother's lead, the women converged on Susan. You stole my man, and you think you can be happy? You had an affair with my husband, pay the alimony quickly. You disappeared after borrowing money. Pay it back now. The situation was utter chaos. The wedding venue wasn't just buzzing, it was a hellish scene. I thought the other guests would be shocked, but instead, they seemed more dumbfounded. Even in such chaos, the smiles on my parents' faces were frightening. And I realized just how people saw my sister. In the midst of this battleground, a person took the microphone. Susan, to think such a charming person is marrying my son, I'm thrilled. Unexpectedly, the former mother-in-law made a bizarre statement. Just as I was wondering what she was talking about, she continued. While it may not compare to the wonderful surprise prepared by Susan's parents, we also have a surprise. At those words, John looked shocked. What are you saying, Mom? Can't you see what's happening? Ignoring John's attempts to calm the situation, the former father-in-law took the microphone. Firstly, I'd like to thank Susan's father and mother for the appropriate surprise they've brought to this occasion. I currently run a company, but I have decided to remove John from being my successor. This is our surprise to you. What? Huh? Both Susan and John were dumbstruck. I had heard during their marriage that the former father-in-law was planning to make John his business successor. His declaration to do the opposite was shocking to me as well. What are you saying, Dad? You've made your own decisions to cheat, to divorce, and to remarry. Up to this point, you've made your choices. A person capable of making such grand decisions should start his own business instead of taking over mine. Don't decide on your own. You said I was the successor, didn't you? Are you kidding? John was visibly panicked by his father's words. No, we're serious. You're already standing on your own 2 feet. Use that judgment to make your way in the world from now on. With the wonderful Susan by your side. Exactly. Having a son who can make such selfish decisions makes me proud. I was speechless. The former in-laws seemed to be smiling just like my parents. But their eyes were not. They appeared to be quite angry. Naomi was chuckling. Serves him right. I'm trying hard not to laugh out loud. I'm so shocked I can't even close my mouth. As I said this, Naomi shared more with me. In my absence, the former in-laws had come to apologize. They had treated me like their own daughter. And along with my parents, the four of them had planned this surprise revenge. Naomi had been in contact with my parents and had also heard from John's relatives, apparently knowing everything. Tears started flowing as I realized how many people were on my side. You're not alone. There are so many people who care about you, Lily. How could they stay silent when someone they care about is hurt? Yes, yes. I was crying too much to speak properly, but I managed to nod. Thank you. By the time I managed to say thank you, I could see my parents and former in-laws looking at us with gentle smiles. The venue continued to be a battleground, with staff trying to intervene in the chaos. Then, a man stood up and headed towards the stage. He approached John, who went pale and then collapsed to his knees. Something was said. Then, the man returned to his seat. Hey, what did that man just say? I can't tell from this distance unless he uses a microphone. Should I go over and ask him directly? With that, Naomi took the smartphone and moved towards the man. Excuse me. When Naomi spoke to him, the man turned around. I gasped. Uncle. Yes, it was my father's brother, my uncle. Naomi showed him the screen. And my uncle was surprised and very happy to see me. Is that you, Lily? How are you? I heard about today from your dad. It must have been tough. Thank you for your concern. But I'm okay. By the way, what did you just say to John? Oh, just now. Since this is my hotel that I manage, I told him we'll be seeking damages. The reception is a mess because of the bride and groom. Hearing my uncle's explanation, both Naomi and I understood. That's why John had gone pale. After chatting a bit more with my uncle, I felt reinvigorated. We tried to get a view of Susan, but there were too many people around her to see clearly. By now, the wedding had ceased to be a celebratory event. Looking around, I saw many attendees heading home, including some of John's colleagues I recognized. But those colleagues were also leaving the venue with puzzled expressions. Well, that figures, I thought as I felt a sense of closure. The wedding ended in complete disarray, with Susan and John looking exhausted and pale by the end. And now, the bride and groom may exit. When the master of ceremonies spoke, most of the attendees had already left. And only my parents, former in-laws, Naomi, and a few of John's relatives were there to clap. A while later, my parents returned home and I went out to meet them, along with Naomi and John's parents. I was a bit surprised but bowed my head to the former in-laws. I apologize for not having been in touch. Thank you so much for your kindness during the marriage. And I'm sorry for ending it the way I did. I had been bothered by not being able to apologize to the former in-laws after the divorce. So I took this opportunity to express my apologies. The former in-laws, teary-eyed, placed their hands on my shoulders. It's us who should be apologizing, they said. But I insisted they didn't need to apologize and thank them for their kindness during my marriage. Afterwards, we all had tea together, expressed our gratitude for the wedding event, and parted on good terms. I felt like I could finally close this chapter of my life, feeling refreshed. A few days later, while I was at work, my phone rang. It was a message from Susan. I had forgotten to block her, but checked the message, which was full of complaints. Your fault, our marriage is ruined. Take responsibility. It was you who snitched to the parents, wasn't it? Jealous much? Just because you're unhappy, don't push it on others. Pathetic loser. I pondered for a moment, then asked Naomi, who was at the desk next to mine. Can we still claim damages for infidelity? Easy. She's been sending enough evidence herself. Indeed. Feeling completely over it, I decided to hire a lawyer to demand alimony. I saved all the correspondence and images Susan had sent and replied to her. "Oh, thanks for all the evidence of your affair. You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon, so let's stop the direct contacts, okay?" A lawyer? What are you thinking? Stop it. Susan began deleting the messages and images she had sent. But I informed her that I had already saved all the evidence, which visibly unsettled her, and she started apologizing. "Sorry. It was all lies. I'll return John, who's no longer going to be the next CEO. And I won't say terrible things anymore. Please, let's forget the alimony. I'm already drowning in debt. I'm not involved anymore. Don't need John either, so do whatever you like. Maybe it was good you took him away. Don't need a man who cheats. Thanks for saving me in the end, big sis." I sent that and cut off contact. I blocked Susan, and she tried to reach out through different accounts, but I blocked those too. I consulted with the lawyer I had been referred to, submitted all the evidence. And they were quick to act. Whether the lawyer had contacted him or not, I soon received a message from John. Maybe because things hadn't worked out with Susan. He sent a creepy, Romeo type of message, which I didn't respond to and blocked. My parents also received a request from him to speak with me. But after feeling intimidated by my parents, he hasn't contacted me since. Later, my lawyer informed me that Susan and John had finally agreed to pay the alimony. Susan apparently tried to fight the claim using her usual tactics. But such arguments don't work against a lawyer. Realizing she had no chance, she reluctantly agreed. John, too, initially resisted but, upon realizing that Susan had sent me ample evidence of their affair, he became pale and conceded. Although it was painful to think how much I had been hurt by such childish people, I was grateful for the many people who had supported me. Afterwards, Susan and John divorced. Susan, having no one to turn to, once contacted her parents. But they declared they were cutting ties, and she hung up crying. John, a rumor milled at work, felt uncomfortable and resigned. Unable to return home, he now scrapes by with part-time jobs. As for me, I received high praise at work and was promoted. In a new department, I met someone special and we began a serious relationship. Naomi and a relative of John are also getting along well, often sharing fond stories about each other. And to celebrate this relief, next month, my parents, Naomi, and the former in-laws are all planning to take a trip to a hot spring. Although I had once hit rock bottom, I now feel happier than before.
Hey, what do you think about your mom?
What about her? She's slow and can't even do household chores.
Since she's your mom, I should stop you from talking like that about her. But you're actually right, so I can't say anything.
I let out a huge sigh.
Would you be happy if you got a new mom?
Huh? Yeah, of course. Huh? A new mom? What does that mean? Various possibilities race through my mind. Cheating, divorce, all unpleasant thoughts come to mind. But as much as he is, I doubt he has stooped so low as to cheat on me. But in the next moment, my suspicions turned into reality.
Right now, I'm actually seeing someone.
My husband flashed a sleazy smile. Seriously? Congrats! Anger reaching its boiling point, I declared, I quit being a mom and a wife. Today is also the end for me as the breadwinner of this house. The two of them were stunned, but it didn't matter. I felt utter despair and vowed to take revenge. My name is Susan. I'm just a housewife and I'm 35. I was a career woman working hard, but I started doing household chores after I got married to my husband Eric. Meeting my husband wasn't just a typical romance. It dates back to 11 years ago. Back then, I was a team leader in a major project boosting sales. I think I was a good team player, contributing a lot to the company I was working for. Recognized for my performance, I was even promoted. I believe I was respected by my colleagues and bosses. I had decided to live dedicated to my work, so naturally I had little interest in marriage. My family and friends would occasionally drop hints about marriage, saying,
"Have you found someone nice?"
or, "Maybe it's time for you to think about marriage." But I consistently responded, "I'm not really thinking about marriage right now." Then the word marriage suddenly became a reality. One day after finishing work, Mr. Hanson, my department head, approached me as I was about to leave.
"Susan, do you have some time after this? I have something I'd like to discuss."
Mr. Hanson was a reliable worker who had climbed up to a managerial position at the age of 40. When I joined the company as a new graduate, he kindly taught me the ropes. Of course, I couldn't refuse an invitation from such a person like him. "Yes, I'm free after this."
"That's great. Shall we go to a nearby bar then?"
I quickly agreed and tidied up my desk before leaving the office with him. "So, what's this talk about?"
"Oh, I completely forgot. Guess I can't handle alcohol after all."
Once we arrived at the bar, Mr. Hanson immediately downed a couple of beers, his face flushing red. I wondered what was going on since he wasn't usually a heavy drinker.
"I wanted to talk to you about your arranged marriage."
Excuse me? I was puzzled, having firmly conveyed that I wasn't interested in marriage because of my dedication to work. "I'm not really interested in getting married at the moment."
"Just hear me out. Actually, I have a nephew about your age."
"Oh." Mr. Hanson continued.
"His name is Eric. His wife actually left him a while ago."
"That's unfortunate."
"I know this might sound a bit strange, but his ex-wife and you look exactly alike."
Mr. Hanson looked a bit embarrassed as he said that.
"I know it's rude for me to ask you to meet up with Eric just because you look just like his ex-wife, but he has a young child, so..."
I realized his point. If the child hardly remembers their mother's face, the child wouldn't question it much if Eric remarried a woman who looked just like her. A mother's presence is necessary for the child, and coincidentally, there I was, single, close in age, and resembling his ex-wife. Mr. Hanson wanted me there for Eric's child. Honestly, I was appalled. My feelings were completely disregarded, but perhaps that was why he asked me to have a chat with him privately like this. Nevertheless, since I hadn't met Eric yet, there was no way to respond to him. I understand the situation, but honestly, since I haven't met Eric, I can't really say anything about this.
"I understand. That's why I've asked to have a chat with you about this. Actually, I've casually mentioned this to Eric, so why don't you meet him just once?"
Honestly, I wasn't interested in getting married. But since Mr. Hanson, who was there for me as my boss, was in trouble, I wanted to help him as much as possible. After some thought, I agreed to meet Eric just once. A few days later, I finally met Eric. He had reserved a high-class restaurant, and not usually going to such places, I was a bit nervous as I headed to the restaurant.
"Good evening."
A nice tall man came up to me and greeted me. "Good evening. You're Eric, right?"
"Yes, I apologize for the late introduction. Nice to meet you. I'm Eric Hansen. I've heard quite a bit about you from my uncle."
Eric was a man with notably long legs. His suit was so well tailored, he could have been mistaken for a model, and he looked far more handsome in person than in his photos. Prompted by Eric, I moved to our table and we talked over dinner. Throughout the meal, we discussed various topics, but he never mentioned that I resembled his ex-wife. He was serious throughout the evening, but his straightforwardness was slightly appealing to me. That night ended with our parting, but we began dating frequently after that, and I naturally fell in love with him. Then one day he invited me back to the restaurant where we first met. After finishing our meal, we were drinking wine when I felt something cold and metallic touch my lips. "Huh?"
"Take a closer look."
At the bottom of the glass was a ring sparkling with diamonds.
"Over the various conversations we've had, I've come to love you, Susan."
"Yes."
"As you might have heard from my uncle, honestly, you do resemble my ex-wife."
"Yes." I felt a bittersweet emotion, but decided to listen to him till the end.
"However, the reason I fell in love with you isn't because of that. I'm completely smitten with who you are inside.
Eric's face was slightly red. It wasn't just because of the alcohol.
If you would accept someone like me, would you marry me?
Eric was always gentlemanly. During our dates, he would escort me, engage in serious conversation, and was generous with compliments. I had always focused on my work, but I realized I had other desires as a woman. Yes, I'd love to. And so we got married. As a condition of our marriage, I agreed to quit my job and become a full-time housewife. Though it was hard to give up my career, I felt committed to supporting Eric. After the marriage, Eric's daughter Tracy and I lived peacefully as a family of 3. Just hearing this, you might think it ended as a happy family, but life doesn't always turn out so simply. Now, 11 years into our marriage, I've started to feel that Eric's behavior has significantly worsened over the past few years. I understand he's tired from work, but he quickly becomes irritable over things he doesn't like. It's a change I wouldn't have imagined from the man I first met. But well, that's inevitable. While enduring his complaints, I continued my role as a housewife. Yet worse was to come. Influenced by Eric's behavior, even Tracy, now 12, began to hurl insults at me. When I warned Tracy for her language, Eric would interfere, saying,
"Don't be so angry. It's your fault for not being able to do the housework properly."
Tracy, thinking she could shield herself with her father's support, mostly hurled insults at me when Eric was around. At first, I thought it was just an early rebellious phase, but this behavior was clearly not acceptable. Even when I asked her to clean up, she showed no intention of doing so, and instead would mess things up even more, saying, "Mom, you clean it up." I discussed this with Eric as it wasn't good for her upbringing, but it seemed he had no interest in parenting. Instead, he blamed me, saying that it was my responsibility she turned out this way.
"Being a housewife must be nice. Not working and just doing household chores is such a good life,"
he would say almost every day. Even though it was Eric who had initially asked me to become a housewife, I couldn't accept his attitude. Even when I protested, Eric would say,
"Talk like that when you can manage all the household chores perfectly. After 10 years, you still can't even clean properly. You're so useless."
completely ignoring me and even adding insults. I was reaching my limit. Honestly, no matter how hard I tried, my love for Eric and Tracy was fading. I felt bad for Mr. Handsome, but this was something I just couldn't handle. Unless Eric's behavior improved, this would likely continue. Being verbally abused by both my husband and daughter, I persevered, doing what I had to do. But even those days had to come to an end. One day, as I was leaving my room to go to the bathroom, I overheard Tracy and Eric talking in the living room. I listened half-heartedly, expecting them to be talking badly about me, but the content of their conversation was far worse than any insult about me.
"Hey, Tracy, what do you think about your mom?"
"What about her? She's slow and can't even do housework."
"Since she's your mom, I should stop you from talking like that about her. But you're actually right, so I can't say anything."
I let out a huge sigh.
"Would you be happy if you got a new mom?"
Huh? Yeah, totally. Huh? A new mom? What does that even mean? Various possibilities raced through my mind. Cheating, divorce, all sorts of unpleasant thoughts came to mind, but as much as who Eric is, I doubted he would stoop so low as to cheat on me. But in the next moment, my suspicions turned into reality.
"Right now, I'm seeing someone."
Eric flashed a sleazy smile. No, normally would a father openly discuss cheating on his wife in front of his own daughter? This is unacceptable. He had changed so much from the Eric I once knew.
"Remember the woman who was with us when I took you out the other time, Tracy?"
Yeah. Was her name Rachel Anderson? She was beautiful.
"Actually, I've started dating her."
Eric had a smug grin on his face as he said this. Seriously? Congrats. I couldn't help but see Tracy's innocent smile as grotesque. I had thought that perhaps we could revert to a happy family if he changed his behavior, but that hope quickly shattered. Desperately trying to control my urge to storm out, I began recording the conversation using the voice recorder function on my smartphone. Even after I started recording, Eric and Tracy cheerfully talked about his dates with his side piece. I realized that any affection I might have had for them had completely faded. Humans are indeed simple creatures. From the moment I knew I was betrayed, I completely lost all my love for them. Though my feelings had been fading, somewhere deep down I still loved them. I loved them unconditionally, simply because they were my family. How stupid of me. I was the only one loving them, while they loved someone else. Thinking this, frustration overwhelmed me and tears fell from my eyes. I swore to myself that I would have my revenge. Afterward, I hired a detective agency to investigate Eric's mistress. Since I knew her name, I expected results soon. By this point, I was somewhat looking forward to executing my revenge. When I returned home, I was insulted by Tracy as usual. "Mom, you can't even hold a job and you got out." I felt nothing anymore. All I felt was disgust for the person in front of me. "By the way, I have an overnight school trip tomorrow, so make sure you prepare my lunch." Her casual demand disgusted me, but I suddenly felt a rush of panic. "What? Tomorrow? You should have told me earlier. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" In my panic and anger, I scolded my daughter harshly. However, Eric, who was listening from the living room sofa, said indifferently,
"Don't shout at Tracy, just go and make it quickly."
I no longer had the energy to argue and headed to the kitchen. While I was preparing tomorrow's lunch, I could hear Eric and Tracy talking in the living room.
"Tracy, you shouldn't become like your mom. Being a housewife is so easy that only useless people like her can do it. You're smart, because you have my genes, so make sure you work at a company in the future, okay?"
"Yeah, of course. It's the same whether Mom is here or not. I'll work and live it on my own."
If it weren't for the first part, Tracy's words would be a perfect answer for a child. But now I felt detached, as if her behavior was someone else's problem. And during their insults about me, I somehow finished preparing the lunch and returned to the living room. Eric was lazily scrolling through his smartphone on the sofa, still smirking, probably spending money on online games as usual. When I looked at the screen, there was a photo of a young woman. It was probably a picture of his mistress. How dare he brazenly look at it on the sofa? My anger towards my husband, who continued to show interest in his mistress even at such a time, and my daughter, who kept looking down on me, reached its peak. I gave up on cleaning the kitchen and went to my room, deciding to stay there for the night. I could always hear them bad-mouthing me from behind the door, but I didn't care anymore. I was leaving this house tomorrow. Yes, I had decided to leave. It might have been an emotional decision, but I had intended to leave this house ever since I discovered the affair. It just happened to be tomorrow. I no longer cared about either of them. The next day, as Tracy was getting ready for school and Eric was dressing in his suit for work, I said, "I quit being a mother and a wife. I'm also done being the breadwinner of this house today." And then I left the house. They seemed puzzled by my words, but I didn't care anymore. I put my suitcases in the car and drove to my parents' house, which was a bit away. So, about me being the breadwinner of my family, actually, since Tracy started elementary school, I noticed that the amount Eric contributed to the household budget had visibly decreased. He probably spent it on his game or even did gambling before putting it into the household account. Thinking this couldn't continue, I secretly started an IT consulting company and began working from home. Thanks to my background as a career woman, my business was going well and sales were steadily increasing. Before I knew it, the money I was bringing in exceeded Eric's salary, and I had become the main financial supporter of the household. The day after I left, Eric began sending a barrage of emails to me, and my smartphone notifications quickly piled up. He probably realized that the household account was nearly empty. Just before leaving, I had withdrawn the amount I had earned from the joint account, so there was almost nothing left. I ignored everything as he had brought it upon himself, but eventually Eric, who looked really impatient, showed up at my parents' house. The doorbell rang, and when I checked the intercom, an exhausted-looking Eric was there. He kept ringing the bell, which was becoming a nuisance to the neighbors, so I reluctantly opened the door, and Eric immediately came to the doorstep.
"I'm really sorry. Please come back home. There's no one to clean around the house and it's a complete mess."
Even now, Eric referred to me as if I were just a maid for cleaning. It seemed like belittling me had become a habit, and even his apology was demeaning. "No need for an incompetent wife, right?" I said dismissively and shut the door. Eric continued to ring the bell for a while, but after I kept ignoring him, he gave up and trudged away. A week later, Tracy called me, seemingly in a state of desperation.
Mom, ever since you left, Dad hasn't been going to work, and he's coming home later and later. I can't do housework, so my clothes are dirty, and everyone in class mocks me.
I snorted. I might have a bad personality, but this was their own doing. So?
So? What do you mean, so? It's all your fault for abandoning everything and leaving, Mom. Come back.
Tracy directed her anger at me, showing no signs of apologizing. You've always called me a useless mom, right? Since you're not useless like me, surely you can easily do the housework, right? Tracy seemed at a loss for words, but I felt nothing anymore. Do the housework yourself. I left her with those words and hung up the phone. After receiving calls for a while, I set Tracy's number to be blocked. I thought I could finally relax, but a few days later, Eric Hansen came to visit my parents' house again with Tracy. He appeared even more haggard than before. Eric pleaded with me to come back home, mostly because he was having financial troubles. You have a job, so you'll be fine, right? I said dismissively, and Eric shook his head sideways.
I lent all my money to someone since she seemed to be in trouble.
Someone? That's ridiculous. He should just admit it was his mistress he lent money to. I was surprised that he still had some guilt.
The money from our joint account suddenly disappeared. You took it, didn't you? I know I was wrong too, so please return at least some of it.
He said that and treated me like a thief. How selfish. I told him that I had been covering the majority of our household expenses with the revenue from my company. My company uses a virtual space to conduct meetings as if we're meeting in person, and it's become very popular. Oh, by the way, my income easily surpasses yours.
That can't be.
You're lying.
I'm not lying. After all the times you've belittled me, I was the breadwinner of this family. I paid for the rent, groceries, utilities, Tracy's allowance, and all her school fees from my own pocket. Seeing them collapse to their knees was just hilarious.
Whatever, just come back. Otherwise I won't move from here,
Eric said, bawling like a child throwing a tantrum. They pleaded so persistently that I thought it might finally settle things, so I reluctantly agreed to return home with them. When I arrived home, I was shocked by the mess. Clothes were piled up like mountains, and garbage bags had accumulated because they hadn't been thrown out. Eric seemed relieved that I had come home and began to act arrogantly again.
You see, work like the housekeeper you are.
I sighed at my incredibly foolish husband and responded, Why did you drag me back if you're going to act like this? I'm useless, right? So why don't you have your mistress do it? Eric was taken aback by feigned ignorance.
Huh? My mistress? What are you talking about?
I shoved the detective's report in his face and played the recordings from my phone. I have all the evidence. Weren't you openly talking about your dates with Tracy in the living room? Didn't you hear? Seeing the look of doom on Eric's face, he was at a loss for words. I'm going to divorce you. I hope you won't contact me again.
Don't say that. You're perfect as a housekeeper here. This is where you shine. Stay here, okay?
Eric was relentless in his nagging. Are you still not getting it? I earn much more than you could ever compare to your salary. Who would willingly stay in such a place? If this is going nowhere, we might as well go to court. Do you think you can win after all the times you took advantage of me and yelled at me? When I threatened him with a lawsuit, he had nothing more to say.
And what about me? It's awful to abandon your own daughter. I'm still a minor. You should take care of me. I can't stay in this house anymore, so you should take me to Grandma's.
Tracy continued to insult me. She always had an arrogant attitude, just like her father. I firmly refused and told my daughter a harsh truth, that she and I had no blood relation. It's impossible. After all, Tracy and I are complete strangers.
Huh? Wait, what?
That means you're not my child. You wouldn't know since you were too young.
What does that mean? You're not my mother? What's going on, Dad?
Oh, well, your real mom ran away. But you see, Susan looks just like your real mom, so it was really helpful that you got used to her so quickly.
What? You've been deceiving me this whole time? I don't understand.
Tracy burst into tears. I tried to act as her mother, but in the end it came to this. I no longer felt any love. Since you've always mocked me, this is only natural. I dismissed Tracy's tearful pleas. Tracy began to attack Eric Hansen, shouting, You've ruined my life! Fix this, you jerk! By then I had already left the house. Even after returning to my parents' home, I continued to receive calls from them for a while, but as I kept ignoring them, they eventually gave up. Later, I successfully sued Eric and his mistress for compensation and managed to get a divorce. As for Tracy, although she used to be assertive, she has become quite introverted and now spends her time quietly at the edge of the school. Given her personality, she doesn't seem to have many friends, and it appears no one is really looking out for her. Eric, on the other hand, has run out of money and has stopped going to work regularly, which has led to his demotion. I heard that the two of them have moved to a shabby apartment. I hope Tracy acknowledges her past mistakes and grows into a responsible adult. As for Eric, I now realize he was just a trivial man who was abandoned by his previous wife. And so the tumultuous chapter of my married life has come to an end. Now my work is going well, and my days are busier with a new project that seems to promise even more activity. However, this busyness is nothing compared to the pain of the past. I am fully committed to making this project a success. I will continue to move forward towards a bright future. This happened right after I bought a house with a garden. Both my husband, Kevin, and my mother-in-law, Dorothy, declared their intention to move in with me, grinning mischievously.
Mom and I are moving into the new house too.
If you don't like it, I'll just have my son divorce you.
Dorothy's coming, so of course my terrible sister-in-law will come along too. They knew I wouldn't like it, but still went through with it. I shuddered at the thought of the daily harassment continuing even after moving. No, I don't intend to live together there.
What? Know your boundaries.
Dorothy raised her eyebrows. What she pulled out was a divorce form already signed by my husband. Her face said she didn't care about anything as long as she got the house. It was scary how well her plan worked. I had to suppress my laughter desperately. I wonder how scared I looked with my head down trembling while Dorothy looked so proud. I quietly signed the divorce papers, packed my things, and left their house. It was on the day of the move that I received a relentless call from Dorothy. She finally realized, huh? Dorothy demanded a meeting to talk. This was just what I wanted. I would meet her and end it with my own hands. After careful preparation to punish them, I headed to the battlefield. My name is Tracy. I work as an office worker at an advertising agency. It was the chief at a newspaper company who introduced me to Kevin. I was in a tough spot, so I couldn't say no to my chief. I ended up marrying Kevin after dating for 6 months at 29. I'll regret this decision for ages. I think Dorothy, Kevin's mom, intended to deceive me from the beginning. She seemed gentle and kind, but once I married into the family, she completely changed her attitude, and she showed her true self as a terrible mother-in-law.
Hey, Tracy, what are you dawdling for? When you're done with the dishes, go out and start weeding the garden just like I mentioned earlier.
There was not a day at my in-laws' house without Dorothy's shrill voice echoing. Every day was rough for me, and all I could do was reply with a sigh. After getting married, I was asked by my husband to live with his parents. His dad had passed away due to illness, and his mom had been suffering from leg pain for many years. He was really begging me because he didn't want to leave his mom all alone in their old house. But Dorothy was actually walking around like nothing was wrong. She insisted that educating her daughter-in-law was a mother-in-law's duty. It was harsh to me every day. Kevin, too, was no better. Even when I wished to live separately, he would only make excuses to avoid it. He's always under his mom's thumb. He never stood up for me when Dorothy was being annoying to me.
Sorry. My mom's pretty harsh, you know?
Stop laughing and help me. I'm really suffering here. Ever since we tied the knot, I've been feeling really anxious and depressed. Sometimes I just start crying out of nowhere or feel sick for no reason. I got checked by a specialist. Turns out it's an adjustment disorder. I was really bothered by how living at my in-laws was affecting me. Dorothy was relentless with her tough requests, not caring about my feelings.
Don't be lazy just because it's your day off. Have you finished cleaning the room? Haven't you done the shopping yet? Check the discount stores before you go.
Please wait, Dorothy. Please don't rush me. I have a headache. I'll make sure to finish the cleaning and shopping later.
Don't talk nonsense. If you're told to do something, do it right away. You're my son's wife, aren't you?
I wanted to argue back that me being a daughter-in-law doesn't mean that I'm a maid. Most of the demands from Dorothy were about the house itself. Clean the gutters, replace the curtain, fix the splinters on the pillars. My in-laws' house was very old and falling apart. It creaked with every wind. Each time Dorothy would urge my husband,
Please just hurry up and get a new house. This is actually a rental house. We're renting it cheap from an acquaintance. Wouldn't it be nice to live freely in our own house for once? Kevin, you agree, right?
I do think so. But with my salary, it's impossible. A house of our own is just a dream.
The son who can't do anything right made Dorothy mad. So now, as his wife, she's giving me a hard time. Cook, clean, weed the garden, take her to the doctor. I was exhausted from working full-time, but Dorothy and my husband didn't show any concern. And that's why I got stuck with an adjustment disorder. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, this person moved in 6 months after me at my in-laws' house. Hillary, my sister-in-law, came back divorced with her child. She had been kicked out after being told,
I never want to see your face again.
Well, it's my fault. I neglected my kid and slept with my husband's boss.
What kind of moral sense does this woman have? Seeing me disgusted, Hillary smirked. Just like her mother, Hillary did nothing around the house and even had me clean her room.
Can't help it, right? I'm raising my kid. You wouldn't understand if you haven't had one. But it's tougher than it looks. So, Tracy, I'm counting on your support.
Hillary doesn't work. She just lounges around all day. Caring for her child is just an afterthought. She spends her time relaxing on the sofa, being lazy. Her behavior is especially bad on weekends. She leaves her daughter with me and goes to the casino. Hillary, the troublemaker, seems to hang out with a sketchy crowd and they drink together in the afternoon. It would be nice if she helped with the housework even a little, but she really does nothing. She's the kind of woman who would do anything to get money for fun. Here's what happened one day. Hillary handed me a pouch, and when I asked what it was for,
That's our dad's. Cufflinks, rings, and a vintage lighter are in it.
What? What am I supposed to do with this?
You're so clueless. Go and sell it. And make sure you sell it for as much as possible, okay?
All these things used to belong to her dad who passed away. They're all special things to remember him by. It made me sad when my sister-in-law wanted to sell them like it was no big deal. Thinking that she would use the money from selling them to go gambling made me feel even more helpless. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, so I explained the situation and dumped the whole pouch on my husband. What he did with my father-in-law's things after that, I don't know. And frankly, I don't want to know. Many things happened when Hillary first returned. My belongings started to go missing after Hillary arrived. I also think it was around that time that I learned my husband might be cheating. A friend who works at a different advertising agency happened to see him on a weekend. She saw my husband walking arm in arm with a young woman. When I heard about it, I was furious. I'm busy working from morning to night, even on my days off, and you're out having fun with a young woman? That's unacceptable. It's cheating, isn't it? Who is she? Tell me the truth.
No, I wasn't cheating. She's just a girl from a brothel.
Excuse me? You shouldn't be going to brothels when you're married, should you? Hillary saw us arguing and burst out laughing. As for Dorothy, she looked dismayed, but didn't strongly reprimand my husband. According to her, if a husband visits such places, it means his wife isn't devoted enough.
Getting worked up over something like this is embarrassing. The fault is yours, really. It's because of you his wife don't devote enough to Kevin that things like this happen.
I don't think so. Dorothy, isn't that a bit unreasonable?
In this house, that's common sense. Besides, going to brothels or cheating is just what guys do. And as his wife, it's your duty to forgive him with a generous heart, you useless wife.
It seems my common sense is nonsense to them. Forgive Kevin for visiting brothels or cheating on me? I couldn't possibly do that. My irritation only grew. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. To change this unpleasant situation, I decided to take action. Even after that, Dorothy and Hillary remained the same. Day after day, they treated me like a servant, lying on the sofa or the floor like sloths. They would raise their voices when hungry.
Hey, why isn't lunch ready yet? It's already noon. Don't dawdle, okay? Tracy, you're so slow, it's annoying.
Then why don't you make it yourselves? I'm constantly on the move, doing garden work, cleaning rooms, shopping, without a moment to rest, you know.
Don't talk back like that. Know your place.
It seems I'm not even allowed to voice my opinion. That's it. I'm done. I wanted to get a divorce as soon as possible. But if things were that easy, I wouldn't be suffering. It was my chief at the newspaper company, whom I owe a lot, who introduced me to my husband. My chief also asked me not to do anything that would embarrass him. Annoyingly, Dorothy knows this very well and often brings it up. I'm completely stuck with this situation. For a while, all I could do was endure. Then one day, my husband's infidelity became an undeniable fact. My friend from a different company found some clear evidence. That prepared the first stage of my plan. Now I had to make the next move. I think about a month had passed when Hillary spread out a housing catalog on the dinner table after we finished eating. It was unmistakably the one I kept in my bag.
Look at this! It seems like Tracy was planning to buy a house.
Wait, did you rummage through my bag? Why would you do that?
Just be quiet. Wow, it's a bit in the countryside, but it's a nice house, isn't it?
Tracy, you should consult me about this kind of thing.
The house I had my eye on was a detached house with a garden. As Dorothy said, it's in the countryside, but it looks quite nice. I had already visited the site several times and met with a real estate agent. When I honestly confessed about it, the three of them really took an interest.
What? You've already gotten that far in the discussions? You're buying it? It's cheap and spacious, not bad. Kevin, it takes guts for a man.
What? But, a house with a garden. It's tempting.
If you're going to own a house, then I'll support you. I'll even help out a little. Don't you want to move out and live there together with Tracy?
Dorothy was pushing my husband to do something he didn't need to. She's such a hypocrite. She has no intention of letting me go that easily. When I asked whose name the house would be in, my husband frowned.
I'm the head of the family, right? It will be in my name, of course.
Then, is it okay to proceed? We'll buy this house and move out. Just the two of us.
Okay, I understand. I'm a man too. We'll buy the house. Hurry up and proceed with the discussions.
Finally, my husband clearly says so. Dorothy and Hillary both praised him, but I saw what they were doing. They glanced at each other and cracked up. A few days later, just after purchasing a country house with a garden as planned, my husband and Dorothy, both grinning, declared their intent to move in with me.
Mom and I are moving in.
What? But we were supposed to live, just the two of us in this house.
After thinking it over, we've decided to live together after all. You wouldn't say no, would you? If you do, I'll make my son divorce you. I wonder what your chief would say.
There it was. What a despicable tactic. If Dorothy was coming, Hillary would surely come along. Thinking of the daily harassment that would continue even after moving, I shuddered. Absolutely not. I have no intention whatsoever of living with you there.
What? What are you saying? Don't you understand your situation?
Dorothy was angry. her eyebrows raised. What she took out was a divorce form, already signed by my husband. Her face said that she didn't care about anything as long as she got the house.
If you really hate it that much, here, sign this.
Yes, I will sign. I'll go ahead with the divorce. I've had enough.
What? Hey Tracy, are you really okay with this?
Kevin, let her be. Living with such a snotty and useless woman would only upset you.
You're young. You'll find another wife soon enough. That was a terrible thing to say. I signed the divorce papers. Dorothy was triumphant, oblivious to how I felt. It was scary how well her plan worked. I had to desperately hold back my laughter. A few days after I moved to a new apartment, I got several calls from Dorothy. Checking the calendar, it was as I thought. Today was their moving day. She finally realized, huh? The ringing wouldn't stop, calling me non-stop. How typical of Dorothy. Even though I ignored it, she kept calling, so I finally answered. She started yelling without even a greeting.
You! What have you done? What kind of property have you trapped us with?
It's been a while, Dorothy. Please, calm down. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't play dumb. It's about this house. You knew it was a defective house when you bought it, didn't you? It must be so. It has to be.
Indeed, the house I chose had issues. The ground itself was weak, and the land often sank. Even if it was a new construction, doors would stop closing after a few years. Apparently there's a mine tunnel for coal mining around here that's causing all the issues, but the locals already knew about it and built their house on safe ground. It's only the clueless new folks moving in who are dealing with the issues. I trapped those three by using a problematic house this time. It was hard work coordinating with a real estate agent to find a reasonably priced defective house. I set it up so that Hillary would swipe the real estate catalog from my bag. I made sure to leave my bag out where she could easily grab it. Unaware of this, the three of them fell right into the trap and moved. It was hard to keep from laughing when signing the divorce papers. I wanted to tell them everything, but I couldn't do that. I pretended I didn't know. A defective house? That can't be right. Isn't there some mistake?
What's with that tone? How insincere. Anyway, come over here a bit.
What? No. Honestly, I never want to see you all again.
What? What did you say?
I had no desire to meet a family of monsters that didn't understand common sense. Even if they offered me money, I'd refuse. And then Kevin spoke up.
Come on, Tracy, please. Just think about our feelings for a bit.
I'll return those words to you, Kevin. Have you ever considered my feelings, even a little? You haven't, right? You never stood up for me, right?
I'm sorry. I'll apologize. Hey, where are you? Tell me where you moved.
As if I'd tell you? If you showed up, I'd have to move again. Anyway, I want to cut ties with you all. The conversation went nowhere. Eventually, Dorothy started making even more unreasonable claims. She said the divorce was invalid and that we were still family. Impossible. I submitted those divorce papers. How unreasonable can these people be?
Anyway, let's just meet once to talk. We're getting nowhere. Come on.
I'm also begging you, Tracy. Just once. Let's settle this there, okay?
Dorothy and Kevin were insistent on meeting to talk. Even if I refused, they would surely call again. With no other choice, I decided to meet and deal with them once and for all. Fine, we can meet up just once.
Thanks, I owe you one.
But I'll choose the time and place, okay? I didn't want to risk being ambushed or followed. If I don't gain the upper hand even a little, the future will be terrifying. After thorough preparations, I called the three of them to a cafe. I arrived 20 minutes late to the cafe I had specified. Dorothy and Hillary, who had been waiting, were already furious. Kevin had a wry smile. They were just as I had expected.
How dare you make us wait? You're really out of line.
I don't even want to hear that. What do you want?
What is that attitude? It's infuriating. Because of you, we ended up with a defective house and it's causing us trouble. You need to take responsibility.
That's why I'm telling you. I didn't know anything about that. It was you who started talking about moving in together, right? Dorothy was at a loss for words. She couldn't deny it. She and Hillary had jumped into the defective house themselves. Apparently, the previous residence was undergoing renovation by the owner. In other words, they had nowhere to stay but that defective house. If you're done with your part, then let me speak. Dorothy, I will be suing you for damages and will file a lawsuit. Be prepared.
What? Damages? A lawsuit? Why would it come to this? I can't accept this. What have I done to you? Prove it.
You caused me mental distress to the point of developing an adjustment disorder. I showed them a copy of the medical certificate I received from the hospital. All three stared intently at it. Dorothy's eyes were particularly wide. She probably never thought I was seeing a psychiatrist. You never thought about how much your verbal abuse could hurt someone, did you? I suffered a lot. I felt nauseous and cried. It was really tough.
That's because you're weak. It was all because you were a terrible daughter-in-law to begin with, wasn't it? Isn't that right?
That too. Do you realize that calling me a terrible daughter-in-law is actually considered insulting and can be a crime? You could be punished with imprisonment for up to a year or a fine of up to $3,000.
What? It's not that big of a deal.
It's not that big of a deal? Dorothy really doesn't understand anything, huh? She's been really sinful. It's not okay to be mean and hurt others with words. There's more that could subject you to criminal penalties. Dorothy, you threatened me several times by saying you would talk to my chief about the divorce, right? That's a crime of intimidation.
Just a minute. Are you being a bit too dramatic?
I'm not being dramatic. By the way, the statutory penalty for intimidation is imprisonment for up to 2 years or a fine of up to $3,000. I won't back down, you know.
Wait a minute.
Hillary cut in. Her gaze was sharper than usual. You could say she had the look of a former delinquent. A face that said she wouldn't be intimidated.
Listening to you, it sounds like you're taking advantage of Mom's ignorance and scaring her. Do you even have any proof that you were insulted or threatened?
Yes, I do, because I've been recording all along.
What? Recording?
Yes, I have the voice memo function on my smartphone activated all throughout my time at my ex-in-law's house. And that's quite a bit of audio recording. I've also prepared data extracted just from the parts where I was verbally abused by Dorothy. If I submit that as evidence, the crimes of insult and intimidation will almost certainly be confirmed. Did you think I would just sit back and take it? It's not just you, Dorothy. Hillary, you too. You'll likely be held accountable.
What? Why? What did I do to you?
Take a moment to think. Didn't you commit a crime? Or are you saying you didn't do anything to upset me?
There's no way I did anything to upset you. Don't mock me.
Hillary insists she's innocent. I showed her the screen of my smartphone. Suddenly her face turned pale. It's not surprising she turned pale. What was shown was her rummaging through my bag, the disgraceful sight of her snooping around my things.
What is that? Why? When did you even take that?
Ever since you arrived, my belongings have often gone missing. My makeup, accessories, clothes, bags. So I set up a hidden camera.
That's terrible. How dare you act on your own when you're just Kevin's wife?
I'm appalled. Who's acting on their own? Let me tell you about the statutory penalty for theft. Imprisonment for up to 10 years or a fine of up to $5,000. I'll contact the police later. Hillary was gaping, wanting to say something but unable to. She looked utterly helpless. I have a record of everything that has gone missing from my possessions. The actual extent of the damage is well documented, making it easier for the police and lawyers to act. When it comes to action, I go all out. I had decided that I would never forgive these three. And finally on to Kevin. He shrugged when I glared at him. If we're talking about the degree of unforgiveness, he's the one I can't forgive the most. I thought marriage was about helping each other. But Kevin, it seems you had a different idea, didn't you? From the beginning to the end, you were always against me, weren't you?
Wait, what? I didn't mean that at all. Seriously, trust me. I was just trying to help out today, you know?
Yes, I've had enough of lies. I don't need your mediation. Kevin is a wimp who only thinks about himself, always trying to side with the stronger party, just as he has always been on the side of his mother and sister before. And even now, trying somehow to get on my good side, hoping to be the only one forgiven. If he had been a more decent man, I might have continued our marriage. If he had said we should live alone in another place, I might have done just that. The name of the person you cheated with seems to be Mandy Smith.
What? How?
How do I know? I had someone check for me. I have a friend who's good at that sort of thing. I even have a photo of you and Miss Smith entering a hotel together. Here, look.
Whoa, no need to show me.
As I attempted to show him the screen of my smartphone, my ex-husband quickly blocked it. He probably didn't want his mother and sister to see the evidence of his affair. It should matter to them. Morals and ethics are already broken among all three of them. They are that kind of family. I put my smartphone and the copy of the diagnosis back in my bag. There's no need to show any more evidence from my side. Dorothy, Kevin, and Hillary all seemed to have lost their will to fight. They know they could be reported if they mess up. They seem frightened. Unfortunately, I was fully intent on consulting the police regardless of whether they did anything. I think the police will be visiting you eventually. It's better not to run. Your crimes might become more severe. Also, make sure you don't contact me. Got it?
Tracy, don't be so cold. Weren't we married until just recently?
Yes, we were. Honestly, I think marrying you was a huge mistake. I feel relieved now that we're not married. If you follow me, I'll sue you for that as well, so be prepared. Don't wait for me in front of my workplace. Don't contact me unless absolutely necessary. I made a few simple promises like that with the three of them and left the cafe. They remained looking down even after I left the cafe. You can't stop people from gossiping. Word about my ex-husband's divorce spread like wildfire at his job. Word got out that he was cheating and treating his wife badly. Now his coworkers are starting to ignore him. After all, Kevin and I were introduced through a department head of a newspaper company we dealt with. It was unnatural for my ex-husband to be viewed harshly after losing their trust. Unable to bear the hostile environment, he eventually quit. His last job did not go well, and his relationship with his mother and sister began to go bad. He reappeared in front of me about a year after our divorce. I was stopped on my way home from work, and there stood a shabby man. Kevin? I didn't recognize you for a second.
I guess. People tell me I've changed a lot recently.
He seemed to be struggling, and that wasn't surprising. Both Dorothy and Hillary were fined after their guilt was confirmed. I had demanded damages from Kevin too. They must be financially struggling now. They still have to pay the mortgage for the defective house they live in, so it must be quite difficult. How are your mom and Hillary doing?
They're alive, but barely. Both are working now. They have to or they can't eat. They always say they want to go back to how things were.
They want to go back to living off what you and I earned? Sounds just like them. They're just like parasites. I'm truly glad I cut ties. I thought he might say something in return, but he didn't. Instead, my ex-husband let out a big sigh and apologized to me.
I really regret everything. I'm sincerely reflecting on it. I was a fool. Like you said, I should have been on your side all along. I must have been out of my mind.
I think your family has always been out of their minds.
Don't say such cold things. Please, let's live together again. I'll cut ties with that family for good. I'm serious. You're all I have.
Oh, that's too bad. I already have someone else. I don't need you, and even if I didn't have a partner, I would never consider getting back together. When I firmly said that, Kevin collapsed to his knees. But there's no way I would fall for such a performance now. If I was a terrible person, I probably would have spat on him right there. I left my ex-husband behind and went home. After that, he never contacted me again. The real estate agent who had helped me informed me of this. Dorothy, Kevin, and Hillary's lives turned into a real mess after that. They were angry at each other for how bad things were at home, and it just made things between them even more strained. Sounds of arguing and breaking glass could be heard from their house every night. They were always insulting and annoying each other, but they couldn't go their separate ways. It was like being in hell. They're pretty much on their own in their neighborhood, and nobody wants anything to do with them. So they'll likely sell their house for next to nothing and end up with no place to live and a bunch of debt. In my mind, I can clearly see the three of them huddled together under the cold sky, cursing each other. Someday I'd like to see with my own eyes just how miserable they've become. Meanwhile, I am living a surprisingly happy life. It's all thanks to my new partner. He's a skilled salesman working for a major trading company, a mature man who can respect others' values and has a calm disposition. He's also divorced, just like me. Soon we plan to have a nice little ceremony. My first marriage was a total nightmare. Sometimes I get really emotional thinking about how much it hurt back then. But even so, when I'm with him, my heart just fills up with warmth. This is where I truly belong. It's been a long journey, but I've finally arrived. That's how I feel. I've been through some tough stuff, but it's made me want to be more understanding towards others. I'm looking to live a happy and fulfilling life, taking my experiences as lessons. That's how I'm feeling right now.